Me. There's Bobby.
How are you?
There's Bob. There's Bobby Fulton, the living legend. I want to hear some stories about the Fantastics. You working for Dale Mann, territory
Uh-huh.
stories. How you were over, and then I'll send you I'll tell you a story that has never been revealed on this show before.
Oh, I don't believe
Wonderful.
that for 1 second.
No.
Welcome to the show, Bobby. Thanks for coming
Thank
on.
you. Thank you for having me.
There's,
Thank you for
there's a
asking me.
hand. Yeah. There's Bobby Fulton. And Bobby, I want you to plug all your anything you want to plug about the Chili Coffee shows, all the great extravagances you have.
Yeah.
Bobby had he has the greatest independent promotion shows I ever seen in my life. Just excuse me, fucking unbelievable.
Thank you, Rip.
Fucking unbelievable.
How do you do it? How do in today's
Okay.
age? How do you do it and keep the people coming back?
Well, I'll tell you honestly, I take a little bit of me from what I know from the past and my son Dylan, what he knows of today, and it makes for a good product. We're the Fantastic Simon Rogers and I, or my brother and I, were a team. Dylan and I are a team, and like Rip said, we're glad Rip can come and people can come, and we give them wrestling as you should be, wrestling the way the fans really like it. We have the wrestlers come from two different parts of the arena, and it's just like going back in the old days to me. I think, Rip. I don't know if Rip can agree or not, but I feel that's the kind of product that we produce there for our Chili Coffee shows.
I only like old school wrestling. I can't watch today's problem. It's a shit
It's
show.
hard.
I can't do it. It's everything you were lectured to for years and years and years not to do,
Right.
and now they do it. So
Yes.
I just can't do it.
Right.
Well, that's awesome that combination keeps everybody coming back. I was going to say, what keeps you bringing Rip back was really the
well,
that's
because
what I really
we
want to
need
know.
Rip is one of the hinges on the door. We can't open the door without the hinge being there. And Rip has been, I don't know if you know this or not, but I've known Rip since about my second match in the business in West Virginia. It was probably my third match. I was going down to West Virginia to wrestle, and all of a sudden, Billy Coleman came walking in with a guy on crutches and another guy by the name of Hoss Swede. And Rip was the guy on crutches. He had went and did work for the WWF television, and I think Torres and Naga threw him out of the ring and messed his leg up somehow. So a curly-haired, well-built Mark Shire was on the show, but he was on crutches, and I wrestled Big Hoss Swede that night. I think that was in August of 1977, because my first match was in June, July, and I think August is when I first met Mark Shire. I think that's how you say your name, Rip.
That's right, yeah. God, that's wild. So I'm from Seymour, where Rip's from, and Hoss Tweed was from Seymour, right? He was, which one was
he was Hoss or Boss Tweed, one of the
Well, he said Hoss.
It was Hoss.
Okay.
It was Hoss.
Okay, it was Hoss.
Do you remember who was who though?
Yeah, Ed was Hoss, and then Chuck Nobbett was Boss. So they were both. Ed was a
Kerner.
wrestler at Concordia Teachers College, and he was a school teacher at St. Ambrose.
Was he really?
Wow.
Yeah, a Lutheran, a teacher at St. Ambrose, and then because that's when they sort of had to had the police escort me out of the building because they had me work heel. I never worked heel before. Hell, I still wasn't even smart. So I'm just doing stuff. Hell, I seen guys on TV do shit, right? I watched Captain Lou do this, Bobby Heenan do this. So I said, well, hell, I'll just do all that shit of getting my shit in because I might be croaked tomorrow and I might be out of the wrestling business. So I got to go out there and do all that stuff. I guess I went a little bit overboard because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I just knew that Coleman said, and I went to his house in Akron. It looked like the Munsters' old house. He said, well, my plane's being repaired. And he said, my Cadillac's in the shop. So we'll have to take your Pinto.
Right. I remember that Pinto. Was that your Pinto?
Yeah, that was my Pinto.
I remember. I was going to say a Pinto. I remember seeing Bad Billy Coleman pull up in a Pinto,
Yeah.
and I thought, man, my future's so bright. I got to wear shades.
So this is when you got hurt? I've never heard this story that you got hurt at
I don't think I ever told it or not on
WWE.
here.
Do you remember how you got hurt?
Oh yeah, I was working with Tanaka and Fuji. I
Right.
was worked Allentown one day, and then we was at
Hamburg.
Hamburg. Okay,
Yes.
work Tanaka and Fuji, and all I did was get up, and my knee exploded.
Wow.
That was my bad knee I'd hurt in football, and it was always ready to go. And all I did was get up, and boom, and my knee exploded. So I ended up having to have knee surgery. And years ago, this was before arthroscope, so they'd
Right.
have to cut you open the whole way, and something that you could be out maybe 2 weeks now. It was 3 to 6 months at that time.
Right.
So, but yeah, I was the total shitology, and I was the most rotten wrestler in the world. But it just shows you, no matter how rotten you are, if you keep hanging out, you're a fan, you love the business, you
Right.
pick all the old guys' brains, you can learn survival skills in this business. And here I am, I'll be 70 if I make it in February, still hanging out, doing some kind of teaching, doing seminars, going to conventions, whatever, blah, 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 to the business I love. And it's up and downs, but I wouldn't change nothing about it,
Right.
because this was
right,
the business that I love. And
Well,
Bobby was the same. You got some Dale Man. You got any Dale Man stories?
I have millions.
Oh God, this is awesome.
You know, I threatened to write a book many times. I don't know what stops me, because I'm like this, Rip. When you and I are talking, I can remember so many things,
Right.
and I really need to write it down now. And I want to give to let people know I talk kind of funny, because a lot of people know I've had throat cancer, but my voice is not the same as it was years ago.
Right.
When I sing, I sound like Elvis Presley. It's real strange. But Dale Man, I don't know where to start, actually. I do remember this. He was the second Kentucky promoter I worked for. The first Kentucky promoter I worked for coming out of Ohio was Cliff Lilly. Bulldog
Cliff Lilly.
Yes,
Oh
sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. And what had happened was, after I'd broken the business, after I'd seen you in West Virginia, I started working for Flying Fred Curry, and I became his traveling opponent. So one of the first times to Georgetown for Cliff Lilly, I rode in the car. It was me, Flying Fred Curry, and Dr. Jerry Graham.
Oh,
And
wow.
we all went down on a Sunday, because Sunday was the big day for Georgetown wrestling. And it was like you said about West Virginia. The place was on fire. I mean, the people was into it, and everything. And like you said, Rip, a lot of people don't realize, but a lot of times there was riots at the wrestling shows.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just
That was
like
the
you
norm.
talked about in West Virginia, it was almost a given. If you were a good enough heel, your temperature taker was by, can I get these people motivated enough to get up and riot? And if it happened, it was like Katie barred the door and Molly get the mop, because at them shows you were kind of on your own. I remember one time in Eastern Kentucky, after I worked for Dell a while, we were in Campton, Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky.
Oh
and
yeah.
It was me and another girl in a mixed match. And during the match, I started choking the girl, and the girl had a rope like around her neck. Well, the woman jumped up out of the audience and grabbed the rope. I was a heel, and started really choking the woman with the rope. She thought she was helping her, but she was really choking the babyface girl. I took my foot and pushed her away. And when I did, her husband stood up, about 6'4", about 280 pounds, and grabbed me. And I was holding on to the top rope for dear life. Well, I'm holding on the top rope. I'm looking, and the police in Campton, or they have ride helmets on, and they're leaving, going out the front door when they see this happen. So I'm thinking, if he gets me down off here, he's going to kill me. So Eric Emery comes running from the dressing room as the guy's pulling me and pulling me by the legs and punches the guy. Well, the guy sets me back on the apron and turns to go to Eric. I football field goal kicked him right here in the face. He went flying up in the air, rolled over, and I'm watching him, right? He gets back up on his first row chair, holding his face, and sits there the rest of the night and don't get up. But I mean, if Eric Henry wouldn't have came out, if that guy would have got me down, it would have been all over. And then another time, working for Del Man in Monticello, I got my arm broke in a riot at the Armory, and I know you've wrestled at that Armory.
We had a ride up there. I went running up. Remember the thing at the top where the fans could sit up there? I went running up there.
Well, that was Somerset. Wasn't that Somerset where the fans could sit up top? Or was that Monticello?
Maybe that was, because we ran Somerset and Monticello too.
Right. Monticello was a smaller Armory. But it took me 20 minutes to fight from the ring to the dressing room, which was only about 10 yards or 15 yards. I looked up and chairs was raining, beating me. And how I got my arm broke was I wasn't even in the match. And I went running out because the fans started jumping in the ring, and I grabbed a guy off the ring and went down with him. Well, I had a mask on, and when I had the mask on, he pulled around my face.
Oh, God.
Well, I got him down and started beating him in the face, and I happened to look up, and the guy was swinging a chair, a fan, and it broke my arm, and I kept fighting, but Del Man was smart because he went to the fans, let me have him.
Oh, yeah.
You see, that was the way. The baby face, if he was smart, he said, get back, let me get him.
Oh, yeah.
He would beat you back to the dressing room to get you safe. But, you know.
That's awesome.
Kentucky was pretty wild. West Virginia. Back then, I say this about wrestlers. If you cannot motivate the people to get up on their feet, to get involved in a match, then you're not doing your job. I don't care if it's then or today. And it really takes a special person to get people emotionally invested enough to where they're standing up. I one time was wrestling my brother, and he was under a mask, Jackie. And I remember I was a heel. I always like being a heel better than a baby face. I was beating him up, and I noticed this woman had one leg in a wheelchair. And I threw my brother out on the floor, and I started kicking him. And I looked, and that woman with one leg was crawling across the floor out of her wheelchair, trying to reach to grab me, you know. So, I mean, there's so many fond memories and things, you know.
Hey, this is sort of funny. The first show we ever ran at ICW, we had a 3-day loop. The first one was Campton.
Right.
The second was Sawyersville.
Right.
And the third show was Jenkins.
Right.
We had Hazard TV. That was all we had at the time. Then I'd work the outlaw shows for Don Pruitt.
Right. He was a great promoter too.
He was a hell of a carny, man. He was awesome.
You know, Del Man told me I was 17, I think, when I met Del Man.
Is this you was Crazy Bobby Fulton first?
Bobby Fulton,
Crazy Bobby Fulton.
I wrestled with Crazy Bobby Fulton.
Best.
But what happened was, the first time Flying Fred took me down to Georgetown, I was looking around in the dressing room, and I was supposed to wear a mask, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, everybody had a mask on there. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be like the rest of them. I took my mask off, and I thought, I'm going to be a little bit of Wild Bull Curry, a little bit of the original Sheik, a little bit of Abdullah the Butcher, and I became Crazy Bobby Fulton, and the people would all chant crazy, crazy, and it was so loud that I would drive back from Georgetown, and my ears would be ringing until I got to Cincinnati, where the crowd was chanting, that name, and I went and got a shirt, Crazy Bobby Fulton, and I
Uh-huh.
took athletic tape and marked off the crazy,
Yeah.
so that the people would call me crazy. And
God.
I would roll my eyes back my head and do all this and that. I had a lot of fun. I wrestled Danny Fargo, Hoss Hager there. Me and him had an angle going, and it was a lot of fun. I love Georgetown. It was a lot of great memories.
Now just think of this, Bobby. When after I'd hurt my knee, I was driving back.
Right,
I saw, as I passed the Georgetown exit, I saw the Horse Park Inn.
right.
And I saw somebody had put a wrestling poster, generic thing. I went there, and it wasn't. I seen Cliff Lillian there, but there was the guy. Remember all the guys from La Follette, Tennessee?
Wayne Fields.
Yes, big Wayne Fields.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went and talked to them. So
Right.
then I worked some shows for them.
Right,
So this,
right.
and but now when you're talking about the fabulous Danny Fargo, and you're just talking about Eric Embry. I went
Yes.
from Eric. We worked a show that night. It was me, Randy Savage, and Eric Embry. And he worked the show. Then he was driving all the way out to Vancouver. Remember when
Right.
he
I
went out
remember
there?
when he went out there.
Okay, but that was funny. And then we'd work all Pruitt shows, and Pruitt's old lady be working the box office.
Yes.
She was the old carny. She'd be handling that money 100 miles an hour.
Right,
She had all
right.
the gimmick rings on and everything.
Right.
And Pruitt would have like the 3-piece suit on,
Yes.
looked like $1 million. He'd have the brand new, well, it wasn't a brand new, but it was like an old Cadillac or whatever.
Right.
It was spotless. Then he'd run out of gas on the way there or whatever.
He was really he's one of the forgotten turning masters of the promoting business. Del Mann told me that he would even go as far as flying a helicopter over it. He didn't fly it, but somebody did, and it'd be full of flyers, and he would fly over the town and dump the box of flyers, and that way it would be raining wrestling flyers.
Raining wrestling,
tail
baby.
out of a helicopter.
It don't get any better than that. Wow.
I mean,
talking all this shit that I haven't even, nobody I would talk to wouldn't understand it anyway.
Right,
now all of a sudden we got crazy Bobby Fulton on here,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden, hell, he was there.
right.
He's talking shit, reliving the memories. And you're talking, Camden, yeah, that was the first time I went. Wow.
Right.
Were you trained?
Was I trained?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I always wanted to be a wrestler from the time I was 5 years old. So, and I'm glad you brought that up and asked. There was a promoter in my hometown, Chillicothe, by the name of Hank Best. And Hank was trained by Al Haft in 1957. And Al, and also another guy that lived here is Leon Graham, who's another great, that a lot of people don't know nothing about. But Rip, I'll tell you about Leon Graham real quick. He was such a tough man, and Al Haft loved him. Charles Yachts refused to do anything with Leon Graham. He was scared to death of him.
Really?
And that says a lot for Leon Graham. Leon Graham told me, and he said, I would rather shoot than work. And even Sandy Scott told me years later, he said, Leon Graham wouldn't do business with us. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, me and my brother was passing through the territory, and he said, we're going to beat you 2 straight falls. We're not going to split falls. And I thought, well, Sandy, that's business. You're just passing through a territory. Why split falls with you, and everything. But what happened was, at about 12 years old, I started helping them set the ring up on shows and stuff. And back then, just because I was part of the ring crew, they wouldn't let me in the dressing room. They didn't talk out of school. Those guys came in dressed like businessmen. And back then, a lot of shows was only 3 matches on the card, and they were all 2 or 3 fall matches.
Right.
So that meant there was only 8 guys. But I would set the ring up, and what I would do, you asked about trained, I would set the ring up and help as fast as I could. Then I would get in that holy grail, that wrestling ring, and get in there and roll around, just hit the ropes myself. Practice, And we had a little cabin out in the country where my mom and dad had a place. And the floor gave a little bit. So me and my friend would go in there and wrestle. So I didn't have any real schooling. I had on-the-job training. And when I really got with Flying Fred Curry, I mean, it really lifted me up. Fred was a great baby face. His father, Wild Bull. I was wrestling Wild Bull and Flying Fred, teaming up with Dr. Jerry Graham at 17 years old.
Oh wow.
You know, I mean, and those guys had been on top. Bull for many years, Fred for years. I got a Dr. Jerry Graham story for you, Rep. So me and Dr. Jerry Graham are on our way to Georgetown. So Fred drops us off at the hotel up on the hill. Do you remember that? You remember the hotel up on the hill
Yeah.
from the horse park in?
Yeah.
I think it was called Scottish Inn or something. So me and Jerry Graham gets out. Jerry's got a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken with him. And all of a sudden, we get to the pool. And Jerry said, I want to swim. And I said, well, where you go change your clothes at? And we can see the horse park in right below us. He said, I'm going to take them off here. Well, Jerry takes his clothes off. There, the only thing he's got on is his socks. And he jumps in the water. And he's floating like he's sitting on a float, but there's no float. He's got a bucket of greasy chicken. And he's eating that chicken floating around. And he says, jump in here, Bobby. And I'm thinking, man, I ain't jumping in there. So I reached down to touch the water to see if it showed. And somehow he pulled one of his socks off his feet and threw it at me and wrung it around my neck. But I never jumped in the water. But that was amazing. I mean, you know.
Floated with no float.
Now this
Yeah,
is the original Dr. Jerry Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
400-pound man.
Right.
He was 400 pounds. So even though he took his pants off in public, nobody could see his penis or nothing anyway. He had a built-in shed over top of it. So, you know.
Dr.
yeah.
Jerry, the original Dr. Jerry Graham, that was Vince McMahon's favorite wrestler.
Yes. Junior.
Yes,
Junior.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And guess who else would ride with us to Georgetown? Beautiful Bobby Harmon sometimes.
Oh, yeah?
And
how old was he? Was he about 6'3"?
Yeah, he was tall guy.
He was bigger than all the wrestlers as a manager.
Yeah. Tall, slim guy. He was also Ernie Roth's better half for a long time. But you know, I was around all this stuff at 16, 17 years old. And I mean, these guys have really been around the world, worked on top. I mean, knew their stuff, you know, businessmen, you know.
Was that how you got to West Virginia then? Just through connections?
I'll tell you how I got to West Virginia. Back in the days, I would read the wrestling magazines. Well, a friend of mine would get these wrestling fans would put out these little fanzine things. And he wrote a guy and said, and I wrote him, I said, I want to be a wrestler. He said, well, come to Georgesburg on June the 17th and at the Nathan Guth Armory, and you can wrestle. Well, that was in June. I'd wrestled Hoss Tweed in August. So June, I went down, and Hank Vest was reluctant to give me the Carl Hildegard number for boots and stuff. But I told Hank, I said, Hank, I got a match. I need it. So I ordered my first trunks and boots. And on that, I still have that same Carl Hildegard magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Kellogg. And I wrote on it because I didn't think Jimmy Hines could draw you a dime in Chinese money for some reason. But I wrote the name Bobby Fulton on it. And
now,
that's how I picked my name.
How'd you pick Bobby Fulton?
I thought it was better than Jimmy Hines and Bobby. I like Bobby. I like Bobby because of Bobby Shane.
Uh-huh.
And back then there was quite a few Bobbies. Was young, you know, and I picked that. And a friend of mine said we went through the phone books and picked out Fulton about a month or two ago, reminded me. I couldn't remember how I did it, but I just thought, even though there was a Jimmy and Billy Hines in wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Bad boy Billy Hines.
Right. I figured that I couldn't draw a dime as Jimmy Hines, and I needed another name, you know. So that's how I got that. But so I went down there my first match in Clarksburg, West Virginia, guys. And they put us on first, second, or third. I can't remember. But we had a finish. But we got into the ring, me and that guy. He had never been trained either.
All
He was
right.
starting his first match. So we got out in the ring. About 5 minutes in the match, the dressing room all comes out from the dressing room, and we have a big pull apart
Uh-huh.
because they thought we were killing each other. So the boys came out and actually we were, because the next day I was black and blue from head to toe. But I loved it. I got $5 that night.
All right.
I signed 3 autographs, and I told my dad I'm on my way. My dad had to drive me down there, right? On the way down, I said, Dad, if this ends up not being on the up and up, I'm not going to do it. He said, son, if it's like people says it is, then stay in it. You won't get hurt as bad.
Yeah.
He said, but my dad, Ray, you remember Ray Stevens, right?
Of course.
Ray Stevens lived in my hometown.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, my dad went to school with him a year. And there's a woman in town that still lives here that Ray Stevens would babysit for when he was like 15 years old. And as a matter of fact, she knows one of the ladies that does the stand for the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever walked over there and looked at that, Rip, or not. Have you ever walked over there and looked at that table at our shows?
No.
You need to. There's a belt there from 1949.
Oh, yeah?
You've got to go look at that stuff. I mean, it's the real deal and everything. So next time you come, March the 9th, so you got to live past
March the 9th, ladies
March
and
the
gentlemen.
9th.
March the 9th.
is the next big one we're going to have until
The greatest extravaganza ever.
Rip
Yes,
Boy
sir.
says you got him working so hard there, he can't ever go talk to people or look at anything.
Really? Really?
That's what he tells me anyway.
Bobby's
Well,
a slave
you know-
Bobby's
you know
a
what?
slave driver.
You know what Jim Duggan said? When Jim Duggan left our show the last time, he told the guy, he said, Vince McMahon had never worked me as hard as Bobby Fulton and his family does every time I come to the show.
That's awesome. Hey, so maybe Rip's right
But
there.
you know what Bret Hart said? Bret Hart was at our last show.
Right.
He met up with Marty Wright. They flew from Columbus to Denver.
Uh-huh.
And he told Marty Wright, the boogeyman,
Right.
he said, I've never been to a show so organized and ran so right in many, many years. He said, this show, they had everything done right. And to me, when you say it, Rip, when guys like Bret Hart say it, when other people say it, it means a lot because it's a passion and a love affair that we've had. People don't understand it. We love this business. We don't do it for glory. We do it for the love of it. And that's what a lot of people don't get. And I think that's what's wrong with a lot of wrestlers today is they're doing it for the glory and not for the love of it. You know.
Rip says all the time he has the passion for the business.
Yes, the passion.
He
passion.
always says that, yep.
The
Yeah,
passion.
there's one out of a zillion get this business, and
Right.
one out, and you're. I was like you. I'd have had every wrestling magazine there was. There
Right,
used to be
right.
so many wrestling magazines,
Right.
and I
right.
wrote the letter to Vern Gagne about coming to his school and
Wow,
everything.
yeah.
And then he wrote me back,
Wow.
and then I was supposed to go there, but in the meantime, I got Steve Cooper got me on the show in Oak Hill, West Virginia, right?
Right.
So I would have been 100 times better if I would have went with Vern Gagne, and he would have kept me booked, etc. But I couldn't wait. I had to get in there. I had my car. I had all my Carl and Hildegard, the Shimmer Cape, the Silver Bolero. How many different kinds of 5.0 trunks? The basic generic sort of boxing like boots.
Right.
With the thin, the thin sole and everything.
Yes.
And it was the greatest time of my life. Now, was Zoltan the Great there when we was on this show?
Yes, he was. As a matter of fact, yes, he was on the shows, and he was the guy that I had wrote about becoming a wrestler, Jim Jr. And said, come on down. Well, when I got there, I was 16, and Herman Redchild, the guy with the ring, said, I ain't going to let you wrestle in this ring, boy.
Uh-huh.
but they had a 10-man battle royal that first night. And there
Uh-huh.
was only 9 guys. So I got to wrestle, you know. But you're right. I love those Shaw and Hildegard boots. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine in town here still has his. And he lets me see them every once in a while. They were only $37 back then,
Okay.
but they held up. They were
Uh-huh.
real nicely made, you know.
Well, my heels always wore out, and then my toes didn't wear out. So,
I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. But
now,
you know, that Oak Hill TV was really famous in West Virginia. What were you went and did that Oak Hill television?
yeah, Warren Schermbach and Shirley Love, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Who was a senator, who later became a senator, Shirley Love.
Right.
And it was in an old bowling alley, they told
Right.
me.
Uh-huh.
And it was I guess they either taped it or it was live. Was it live?
It would play that night about 10 or 11 o'clock was what it do. Because I remember the Cuban Angel Ancevita he happened to come home that first time.
Wow.
So I met him.
Right. He's the one that helped. I met him in Calgary.
Okay.
And helped me get into Memphis. Angel Ancevita. I love him. What a nice guy.
Yeah, I've worked with him in the Maritimes,
Right.
Calgary, Puerto Rico, and Kansas City.
Right.
The QB baby.
Yeah,
the
what
QB.
a great guy, huh?
Yeah, I always had the gimmick. The gimmick, put the hand in the pocket to pull out the nuts, milk that, whatever, blah, blah.
Right.
What a bump taker he was.
Wasn't he?
Oh,
Tremendous.
This was funny, Bobby. Now, remember when we were in Japan for Baba together?
Yes.
Yeah, you were just an innocent bystander, but there was some girl wanting to get her hands on you.
Really?
So and you was gone.
Uh-huh.
So I convinced somehow I got a key to your room.
You did?
Yes. This is it. Breaking news. This is the story.
Went into your room.
Never heard.
And I put the pup tent. I'm in your bed.
Right.
And it was a Japanese girl going, Bobby Fulton. I said, come on in.
Really?
Hide your hand underneath the covers, right?
Uh-huh.
So I got the happy ending. I said, now leave. I got stuff to do. She said,
really?
oh. Yeah, she says, thank you, Bobby Fulton.
You just revealed
Have you never told him?
I never told him.
Never in my life.
No. I'd be invading his turf, you know? but I had to do it just to do it.
I hear you. Hey, more power to you.
I need to know, rewind. Like, how did it come about? Like, you saw her hanging out, or you talked to her? How did it?
I heard these girls talking about, it was her. There was 2 Japanese girls, and they was talking. They all knew what hotel we was at and everything.
Right.
And I heard him talking about Bobby Fulton. I said, man, he's going to get something done here. He can just do whatever, and he's going to get. And it. So I went up to his room, and I got the key. I said, I got to go give Bobby something. I don't know if he's in there or not. And you was out, so I got let myself in, jumped right in the bed. And then she says, and then she knocked on the door. Bobby Fulton, come on in. I'm in bed. I'm not feeling. Oh yeah,
that is awesome.
But here's something. Remember years ago, Bobby, I would work every fair show you would have. Bobby would have me in, and then excuse me, that asshole fucking Dusty.
I was going to ask this.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Oh
talk
yeah,
about it or not, or if he remembers it.
No, he would remember. Remember, I had to fucking cancel. I had to cancel a show. I didn't fucking show up, and you didn't use me for a long time because Dusty said I had to work this pay-per-view.
Right.
And I said, I'm already booked for Bobby Fulton.
Right.
He said, if you don't make this show, I'll make sure you're blackballed. You'll never work for anybody in NWA. Yeah. So I went down there and worked the first Battle Bowl. I think it was in Tampa or whatever. It was somewhere in Florida. It was like me and Hulk against British Bulldog and Booker T, whatever.
Right. I understand.
But anyway, that shows you the other side of the wrestling business. that people wouldn't understand, or
Right.
you think, no, that couldn't be right. No,
Right.
that's the way it fucking was.
Do you
Well, let me
remember Rip
say-
missing that show and then not using him after that?
Huh?
Do you remember Rip missing that show and then not using him for a while after that?
I figured he might cancel it again. But let me tell you another story. I had Hacksaw Jim Duggan on one of my fairs. And he told me, he said, Bobby, I've signed with WCW, so I'm not going to come to the show this week. So I told Jim Barnett, I said, Mr. Barnett, this is Bobby Fulton. I have my fair shows. I have Hacksaw Jim Duggan booked. And he told me he's not coming now because he's working for you. And about an hour later, Jim Duggan told me, he said, Bobby, I'm going to be at your show.
Oh, nice.
And this and that. So that's how much power Jim Barnett had.
Wow.
My boy.
Because here's my problem. If I have someone advertised, I have to produce them. I have the public and the fair people to say,
Right.
the reason why they're not here, I had them booked. But it ends up being bad. I'll never forget one time I had Gene Anderson's son booked on a show.
Brian, yeah.
It was Brad.
Oh, Brad, yeah, Brad.
Well, Brad didn't show up, so some black guy went out to the ring as Brad Anderson and wrestled as Brad Anderson, Gene's son. So, I mean, you always have to produce who you tell them you have, because I answer to the public and I answer to the fair, and stuff like that. So I'm a stickler for that. One night, I had Steve Perino wrestle as Brad King, and Brad King wrestled as Steve Perino because I had the sword booked on the poster. But when they got there, they said, well, I'm going to wrestle him. I said, well, hey, the people read the poster. As long as you're Brad King, as long as you're Steve Perino, I don't care who wrestles who. Just get out that ring and wrestle. So as they're going out the ring, I announced Brad King as Steve Perino. And then Steve Perino as Brad King. And a woman from the newspaper who knew about wrestling came up and said, well, you got those names changed. Is the guys later on going to be wrestling? Is that who that's going to be here? I mean, and they never forgot that part. But as Rip knows, one time I was running all those shows, and we were in Columbus, Ohio. And I'd been renting this ring off this guy, and it was an 18-foot ring. And Rip will remember this real well. So the guy the night before cut the sideboards down to a 16-foot ring. But he didn't change nothing else. And he came to me that day and said, Bobby, I made a 16-foot ring now. I said, you did? And my dad was there. And the boards was 2 foot longer. The ropes didn't remember Rip. And we still had the show anyway. We still wrestled the show. Rip was there. And I think that might have been the same day I had the riot. What happened was the sponsors had a great big television, when they were great big fat ones, and they were doing $5 raffle. Well, it was into the show, and they said nobody won the raffle. And we were set up down on an empty lot in South Columbus. And there was projects all around us.
Was this was this when you ran the parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay, I was there.
And what happened was they said no winners. And I'm gonna tell you something. Back then we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
I told the sponsors don't ever do that, because the people went nuts and started rioting and started going nuts. And I looked at the news, got to the projects, and the people now were running out of the projects coming down to riot, because they had said, $5 you can win this TV. And at the end of the day, they said, well, no one won. It wasn't me. It was the sponsors that did it. So we I about had a riot there. Someone about got killed there. But
so did they actually have a reason they gave, or was it just all a rib? That
no, it was a bet. I told them, I said, don't you ever do that. And they just got done telling me, he said, Bobby Fulton, after what we've seen you guys do in that ring, you can make chicken salad out of chicken poop. Because the ropes, we didn't even have ropes. I think one time I threw Rip to the rope, or somebody did, and he hit the pretend rope.
Yeah, that
And
was
Jamie-
I was in the ring and we had no ropes and I was acting like I was hitting the ropes.
Yeah.
Leaning back.
Wasn't there Steel Man there? I thought the Steel Man was
Yeah,
there.
Steel Man. But I remember we went 20 minutes.
Oh, we always went long time in our show.
Uh-huh. Well, guys could do that then.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different.
Hey, Bobby, we are on live, and we do have a couple questions from some fans in the chat,
Right.
if you don't mind.
Right.
So somebody was asking about the match at Thanksgiving Thunder 92 between Bobby and Dixie Dynamite versus Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. Said they have it on VHS from Tape Trade. Do you recall that match at all?
What was it?
It says Thanksgiving Thunder 92. Dixie Dynamite? Was that
my partner, Scott Armstrong?
That's Scott Armstrong.
Yeah. Oh, was it really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I really can't remember that specific match. To be honest with you, I didn't know I even teamed up with Dixie Dynamite. I loved them, though. So they just showed me something that I totally forgot.
Well,
I enjoyed working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That would have been Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Right, yep.
But yeah, that specific match, I don't remember, but you said it was Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden, right? You couldn't ask
Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden,
you couldn't ask for two better professionals than those guys. I mean, they were tremendous to work with, in the ring. They were great guys.
Then we got a $5 donation today. Said my dad had throat cancer, lost his voice box. God bless you, Mr. Fantastic.
Thank you. I still have my voice box. I just have a lot of other repercussions from it. So I'm able to talk and everything. And God bless his father. And anybody else that goes through cancer, goes through radiation and chemotherapy. I don't know if you see my scars there or not. They told me at the hospital, they said we had to kill you to heal you. Oh, wow. And so I'm alive by the grace of Almighty God. And I really believe in that because there were so many times I should have died, but I didn't die. I've got a spring in my throat, too, that holds my arteries together because one day at the house they exploded, and I should have bled out in 6 minutes, but we drove to the hospital, hour and a half, and they put a spring in here. So whenever you get an x-ray, I can see that slinky in my throat holding them together. But, other than that, I'm great. And God bless your father for what he's going through. It's really, really something, cancer is. To get the diagnosis and the treatment, it's unreal.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank, in the chat. It says, Bobby, how did you become the masked sheik? Excuse me.
Well, I became that because it was an homage. It was an homage to the original Sheik. And Rip, I don't know if you've ever seen me do that or not, but I have the trunks just like the Sheik had.
Oh, yeah.
I have the whole 9 yards, but I got a mask, and it has like swords coming down it right here. And how I drew that mask, I took a picture of the Sheik, and I drew a mask on him, what a mask would look like. And I did that as paying homage to the original Sheik. He was one of my favorites growing up, especially if you lived in Ohio and Michigan. If you wasn't a fan of the Sheik, then you didn't know wrestling,
Yeah, well, I was teaching school. And I lived in Union City, Indiana, which is on the Ohio border.
Right.
And we got the Dayton TV, so I got Bruisers wrestling. I got all the Sheiks wrestling every week.
Right.
So I used to go up and work for the Sheik.
Right.
So that was fun, and I still wasn't smart.
I was scared of the Sheik, so I don't know.
I'm still scared of the Sheik.
Everybody was afraid of him. What's funny? I've shared it before, but I was working for Nick Goulders for a short time, and one day I was at the office for whatever reason, maybe wanting to get paid, and he said, "Hey boy, I want you to go over to the Kenta Hotel and pick up the Sheik, and you guys take him to the town for the week." And I got to ride with him to the towns for a week. And I happened to have in my drawer the magazine, This Is Your Life Sheik. And he opened it up and told me about all the pictures. What a classy guy he was. I mean, he was really nice to me, and this guy was all over the world before the internet or anything,
Oh yeah,
and he was
yeah,
he was
he'd
drew
fly
money
out,
everywhere.
be in the main event in
Yeah,
Los Angeles,
yeah,
San Francisco, stuff like that. He was
right.
just always impeccably dressed.
Yes,
He looked like $1,000,000.
Oh, really?
yes,
The
yes.
ring, he was just he you look at him and go, I don't know what he is, but he's something. You
Right,
thought he
right,
was
right.
some kind of movie star or something.
Right, right, right. You knew that, right? Except
Yeah.
for all them, his head looked like Abdullah's,
Oh yeah.
and he was dabbing his head all the time with a tissue,
Yeah.
and
Right.
everything. But I mean, and he wasn't very tall.
No,
He was
right.
really, he's like Ivan Koloff. They're really wide guys.
Right.
I mean, I've heard Jim Ross talk about the wrists of
Mm-hmm.
guys that have them great big natural wrists.
Yeah.
And I remember the Sheik and Ivan Koloff having those thick bone, although they might have been 5'10" or
Uh-huh.
5'9", 5'8", they were 300 pounds. And man, they looked like wrestlers to me. I mean, to me, that's what a wrestler should look like. And the Sheik was thick. Although when I met him, I didn't know he was probably about
Yeah.
48 years old, maybe 49. And I ended up working for him in Detroit
Uh-huh.
on a few shows, and when he was running Ohio a little bit at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that might have been when you was going up, Rip, at the very end of his territory, probably in 80, 79, 80 or something like
This
that.
was 77.
77.
Yeah, yeah. And then cause we was on channel 61 there.
Right.
Channel 61, you'd work TV, then you'd work Kobo.
No,
But
but-
he wouldn't pay you till the next time you come in, right?
Right,
So I
right.
laughed.
Right.
So I laughed and I said, "Oh, so in other words, when I leave or go somewhere else, you always got me, right?"
Right,
I said,
right.
That's okay. I said, "You're the Sheik. That's okay."
That's
I
right.
got by the Sheik. So
That's right.
he just winked at me, right?
A lot of people did. A
Yeah.
lot of people, I believe, did, and everything like that. Abdullah told me a story about Bobo Brazil. Back then, they would book Bobo out of Detroit. So,
Uh-huh.
Bobo wrestled all over.
Right.
But Bobo was happy getting $500 a week.
Right.
But they would send the money to the Sheik,
Uh-huh.
and then he would give Bobo his $500. So back then, could you imagine the money Bobo Brazil was really making? Traveling to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
New York, and then back then, because he was in the Detroit office, they would send a check to Detroit, and with Bobo happy with $500 a week. It's amazing to me the money that the Sheik made off of him.
Yeah, the Kobo Hall was on fire
It
for
was.
years.
Right.
For years. Then it was eventually the same thing of a count out, a double count out, a
Right.
3-minute match, double juice, hit
Right.
them with the gimmick, then they get the gimmick back and the Sheik, whatever. But
Right.
but for a long time that was a hell of an act.
Yes, it
And
was.
just to be seen, meet all these people there, see all these stars, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Right. It was like Madison Square Gardens. I mean, the
Right.
hall was same.
Yeah, it was.
Same thing.
We was talking about Ray Stevens earlier, and the wrestling fans today, he was like the premier wrestler of the 60s, where he would do the over the top bump.
Right.
Ray Stevens was probably the best performer through the
Yes.
to the 60s or the 70s. He was just phenomenal. Ray Stevens was, and he's from right there in Chillicothe, right?
Yeah, he came here and lived for a year. Now I got a story for you.
Okay.
Al Hack had a gym up in Columbus, and he had a ring, and he had guys work out. Well, there was a great big window with a big ledge on it where Buddy Rogers would get up in that window and lay to get sun.
Right.
And they said when Ray Stevens walked into that gym and got in the ring and was working out at 15 years old, Buddy Rogers got up and couldn't believe what he was seeing
Oh, wow.
because he was such a natural. And he was only like 15, 16 years old when he started wrestling. And I mean, a couple of things happened to him where he got in a motorcycle wreck and
Right.
broke his ankle and messed him up from not being the performer that he was. Here again, he was a guy about 5'7", 5'8". Wasn't a big guy, but he drew money in California. He was like the Dick the Bruiser of Indiana or
Right.
the Sheik of Detroit in California. He was the man for years.
And whenever he get hurt, it's because like it's from just living life and being a daredevil.
Right,
was
right,
what
right,
it was.
right.
Didn't give a shit, having a good time.
He didn't.
He didn't. Hey, now years ago when Bobby, you first started running those big shows, do you ever remember me getting on you
Yes.
because you paid out too much money?
Right. I remember.
You would have a card so loaded and you was paying everybody so much money.
Right.
And I ran towns, so I know how hard it is to run towns.
Right.
And there's nothing being as stressful as running a big convention and a show, running shows 3 straight days or whatever.
Right.
But I was on the road with ICW, and a lot of times I was running one of the towns.
Right.
And so I knew how bad that was.
Yes.
So a normal person, now you're working all this stuff, you're so nervous, and then all of a sudden, no matter if you win or lose, you can't wait till the next emotional high.
That's right. It is. It is like
a drug. It's a drug.
Because I'll never forget, even when I did my tough man competitions and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
made real good money. On Monday, I was down.
Yeah.
Because it is that ride, and it's, up to the promoting it. A lot of people don't realize this, Rip, but even to this day, I put out 1,200 window cards for my shows. And you can imagine, a lot of guys today don't even put out any. But years ago, 100 used to be a lot. But I put out 1,200 a day for my shows.
Wow.
As soon as you come into Chillicothe city limits, you see all the thing about wrestling.
Right.
Signs.
Right.
Arrows.
Right.
Everything. And when you come into town, you say, well, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and that's true anywhere if they put the work into it, right? If you don't see posters or don't see a sign, you go, it's not going to be good at all.
Yeah, it's like when I'd run shows, I'd put the posters up downtown and Walmart, the key areas.
Right.
But then a lot of times the kids would steal the signs and stuff.
Well,
so I'm having to go back and re-put them up, and to even break even in promoting.
Right.
Hell, I get free cable advertising, free newspaper. It's like we had 3 shows in Seymour, and Von Linus, his daddy, he'd help me with the shows, and he was a middle school principal, the king, and he'd say, well, we got this show coming up. I says, you got anybody yet? He says, no. And he'd have over 100 and some tickets sold. He'd strong arm them kids into buying the tickets and shit, right? But we did 3 shows in a row of 1,000 people.
I heard that. I remember hearing about them.
And then a lot of times, guys, I would advertise. They just didn't show. I remember Tommy Rich didn't show up. Junkyard Dog didn't show up or whatever. But we made do or whatever. Nobody bitched, And but what a high it was, and you're so fucking nervous. And then all of a sudden you made it, and then I can't wait till the next one. It's just so much fun.
Yeah,
it's just so much fun.
Right. Yes.
We do have another fan super chat question here. It says, what did you think seeing Terry Taylor as the Red Rooster?
Well,
any opinions on that?
Well, business is business. Terry is a tremendous professional wrestler. He knows the wrestling business. It's like Bill Dundee told me a long time ago. This business is mind over matter. If you don't mind, you're not going to matter.
Yeah.
So if they give,
I like that.
If they give him a job and tell him to streak his hair red and go up there and do this and that, then Terry, being a professional, has to make that out to be the best he can. Whether it works or not, when it's an idea like that, if it doesn't work, it's on the promoter. But now, if Terry was to say, "Hey, I want to be the Red Rooster," and everything, and it doesn't work, it's on Terry. But a gimmick like that, I think it was like Dusty's polka dots. It was a knock for him.
It was a rib.
It was a rib.
Yeah.
But Terry had a family to feed.
Right.
If you're not wrestling or working, you're not eating. So he did what he had to do. So I say kudos to him for being a man and doing what it takes,
Just doing the best you can with what you're given
What
with.
you're offered, yeah.
That's all you can do.
Right,
because
right.
all the guys that worked NWA for years, then they would hit to work for Vince Jr. They were all punished in some form.
Right. You know what Vince Jr. said about me? He said he sounds too much like a wrestler.
Yeah, they don't want wrestlers.
He didn't want. Yeah, he said, man, he sounds like a wrestler to me. Well, what are you supposed to be? I was one since I was 17 years old, 16. So I'm going to be one, right?
Well, before we let you go, too, we got to get a little bit to the Fantastics. I know we always talk the old stuff. We do every single time, and I personally love it.
Right.
But we do have to at least bring that up. How old were you then when the Fantastics started? I didn't realize you had such a lengthy career. It sounds like before that even.
Yeah, I was about 23 years old when it started, and I was working in San Antonio, and I was working for Joe Blanchard, and Bill Dundee and Bill Watchford, and put Tommy Rogers and I together in Louisiana as a Fantastics.
So they put you together.
Yeah, but before that, for a very short run, Terry Taylor and I were the Fantastic ones for a short-lived gimmick in Georgia when Jerry Jarrett took over Georgia for a short time before that. So that's how that happened. And Tommy Rogers and I'm not just saying it because I'm here, but there was something magical about us. We clicked as a team, and I think we had a lot of real good matches with a lot of wrestlers, throughout the years and everything.
What was good as a team is you guys were basically about the same size.
Yes.
It wasn't where Ricky Morton had to sell every time.
Right.
Because he's the smaller with Robert. You guys were interchangeable, so you could go back to the same towns and flip-flop the selling.
Right. That's exactly right.
That was so good the way that was done. Because when you would see Ricky and Robert, you knew Ricky was always going to sell.
Okay, I'm back here now. Yeah, you knew the match, and that's the one thing I think we had was we you didn't know what was going to happen. Especially something's happened here. Hold on, guys. Okay, it's better now.
Okay,
For some reason I lost. I'm not good on it. My girlfriend Christy is helping me do this, or I wouldn't have got it done.
Oh, good.
But yeah, Tom and you watch about every match of the Fantastics, and they're all different.
Right.
It wasn't never the same. Never the same. And I think a lot of guys, they don't think of themselves as a team. They think of themselves as individuals. And Tommy and I never thought of ourselves as individuals. We thought as a team as a whole. I think helped us a lot,
I remember I worked. I left ICW and I worked in Pensacola for a week before I was going to Watts.
Right.
So the first night in, I worked Tommy.
Right.
It was his first night in.
Right.
But I was Rip Rogers and he was Tommy Rogers. So I was Rip Randall.
Wow.
I was Rip Randall. Right.
That's funny.
And then they put a hood on me too.
Right. Rip
and
Randall
then so I had him pull the hood off.
Right. That's good.
Because we had TV down there.
Right. I remember.
We had the mobile TV with with ICW, so people knew who I was. Right. So it was all around.
Right.
But what the hell, right?
So did you guys go from there to WCW or in?
No,
Was it NWA then, or
no. We worked in Louisiana. We went to Dallas,
Dallas, yeah.
world class. Then back to Louisiana, then to Tennessee,
oh
and
hell,
back to Louisiana.
oh yeah, I remember you in Tennessee.
Then back in Dallas, and then to the WCW, NWA. We went there. So we moved around quite a bit, you know.
The way it was supposed to be. You didn't homestead for 10 years there.
No.
What were you and Tommy's relationship like outside the ring?
Well, it was all right. But you know, when you travel with somebody that you're not married to, things happen. And but we had a mutual respect for each other, you know. I mean, what do? If he's not there, I don't make money. If I'm not there, he doesn't make money. It's strictly business. And, you know, and I do want to clear up something. A lot of people think that he killed himself in Hawaii. He did not kill himself. He choked to death. He aspirated, I think's the name of it, or something like that. And, you know, it's terrible. We never know. Rip and I know so many guys that are gone way before their time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're shocked when you hear about it. And other times you think, oh my, you know, I seen that coming. But with Tommy, it was bad. I hate that it happened, you know.
Yeah, I would. I didn't know for sure. I'd actually asked Rip before if he knew, because that, you know, there you can look it up and read people different things.
David Meltzer was a guy I don't appreciate. Put out there that he killed himself, hung himself, and that was lie. And that's because the media wants to answer the question first, and they jump to conclusions. That's not true, and people take his word for the gospel when he's only an opinionated guy. Yeah. David Meltzer doesn't know nothing about this business. He's never, unless you've been in it.
You don't know.
You don't know. You can be told, but you don't know. Unless you ran a show, unless you've been in a match, unless you've drawn money, you do not know. It's like Rip and I at my show. I was trying to tell a Hill guy something, and he's looking at me like I'm talking from outer space, and I said, Rip, am I right? And Rip said, yes, you're right. These guys just don't get it today. And some of them been wrestling 20 years on the independent, still don't have a clue. I mean, it's not an insult to them. They're doing what they love, but unless you've really been there, then you do not know. Am I right, Rip?
You're right, and I got to throw in right now, when we had that conversation, Bobby always lays out, they got a special room where all the guys come in. They got the buffet laid out there.
Right.
And he spares no expense. And I pretty much don't eat the day before, so that I can eat as much as possible.
There you go.
There. So
there
it was. So it was me and the world's greatest photographer, Scott Romer. He was there. So, but he was hanging out, and I said, "Get your ass back here, so I can get in there and get something to eat." I said, "You ate all the way up here. You couldn't be hungry."
Right.
Oh God!
Hey, I got to tell you, I was actually Rip's manager at one of your fair shows a long, long time ago. He was wrestling a singles match against Ricky Morton.
Really?
And I was supposed to come up on the apron, and Ricky was supposed to hit me, and then he didn't. But earlier in the match, Rip had told me, he said, "Whatever you do, do not touch him. Whatever you do, you never touch Ricky Morton."
Right.
And I'd never really done anything before. And I was standing by the ropes, and Ricky Morton comes over the ropes and has his like neck over the rope, and he's like, choke me.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, Rip told me, whatever you do, don't touch Ricky Morton. So I was like, is this a test or not? So I didn't do it. And then Rip was like, well, he didn't punch at the end because you didn't choke him. He told him to choke him.
Yeah.
I was like, shit.
Yeah, there you go.
Everything's subject to change in the wrestling business.
In a matter of minutes.
Exactly.
One time I had midgets booked, and the one midget walked in the dressing room and said, my opponent's a little bit taller than me. I said, I don't care. And he walked up to me about 5 minutes later. He said, My opponent's a little bit taller than me. I said, man, I don't care if he's taller than you. And I'm a real stickler about my dressing rooms. Only the boys are allowed to be in there on the card. And all of a sudden, this little old man about 5'2" comes walking in the dressing room with a bowling ball bag. A real skinny old man. I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm the other midget." I said, "You're not a midget. You're a little old man." So what am I going to do now? I got one midget and one little old man. So I sent that little old man out to the ring and called him Little Louie, the world's tallest registered midget. I mean, what are you going to do, right?
The world's.
He was the Andre of the midgets.
I think you've told me that story before.
Yeah.
The world's tallest
I mean,
midget.
you got to do it because, and people don't realize this. If a promoter says something, he has to do it. If he's got worth any salt whatsoever, he's got to produce what he says he's going to do. If the people lose faith in you, it's over. It's over.
That's like if the baby faces promises he's going to win, he's got to win.
I got to tell you a story going back to that. All right. So we were in Dallas, and Gary Hart was a butcher. And we went out and wrestled at Mesquite Rodeo Arena the first time. And there was about 300 people there. And Tony Falk, I first met Tony Falk. Well, I was working for Jarrett, and they started a working relationship. So they would send me to the ICW towns.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the boys would say, "Randy's really being good," because they don't want him going back telling Jerry Jarrett that he's nuts or whatever, right? But I seen this young guy there that loved the business, setting up the ring, working the cameras, wrestling, doing everything. So as soon as I got booked in San Antonio, I got Tony booked. And I called the Papos usually and said, "I got Tony a starting date in San Antonio." And Tony was so happy because I knew he liked working for ICW, but he also wanted to branch out.
Right.
So about every territory I would go to, I would get Tony booked in it. So we were out in Dallas working. So the show built up in Mesquite, where it was like 300 people, then 1,500. And I think the last show was either, I have in my head 9,000, but I don't know if that was right. People was there. But Gary did a match like this. Cowboy Tony was dressed in pink. And if he lost the match with Tommy Rogers, he would ride the bull competition style at the Mesquite Rodeo Arena, where all them cowboys and cowgirls want to see him get bucked up there and break his neck. So Tony kept telling Gary, "I'm not riding that bull. I'm not riding that bull." Now, we had thousands of people there. And Tony went walking out to the cage where the bull was and tripped and fell and claimed he hurt his ankle and couldn't ride it. Well, the next time we went back to that town, there was probably about 100 people there, if that. You're right. If a wrestler, especially a babyface, the best way to kill a babyface off is tell the people you promise you're going to win the belt Saturday night. And then they get there and the booker says, "Well, I made a change. I'm not going to give it to you this time." He's done. He's done. He'll never draw another dime. If you promise the people something, you got to do it. Rip, we didn't talk a lot about, you have to bring me back. We didn't talk a lot about Del Man. And I have so many Del Man stories. It's unbelievable. That guy, a lot of my promoting, I use from learning him even to this day. He stayed in business for years, and he was a lot smarter than I think he gets credit for, promoting.
Yeah, I went on some of the tours out there to Arizona, North and South Dakota. We get in the van. It'd be two midgets, two girls,
right.
Me and Todd Morton,
Right.
and this other guy under the hood, Brian. We'd have the 8-man card.
Right.
We'd have 4 matches, 4 singles and come back in the big battle royal with the girls and the midgets in there.
Right.
And
Right.
it was awesome. I had the
Yeah.
best time working there. And
And
the little road warrior
I
was
remember
there,
the
so
Little
it
Road
was
Warrior.
nothing but shenanigans with
Right.
Danny.
I remember him.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
but also Fine Fred would promote like that. And
Uh-huh.
between him and Dale, that's how all my shows used to be. A lot of them. Remember, I'd go into all those high schools
Yeah.
and everything. It would be 8-10 man card,
Yeah.
you know. And that's when you're selling quality, not quantity. Why have 40 guys on the show the last 4 hours when
Uh-huh.
you can do what you need with 8 to 10 guys and give them a good hour and a half, 2 hour show, you know? People don't get that today.
Yeah, I started running 6-man shows.
Right. Yeah, you
Six,
can do that.
6-man show, 3 singles, come back in a 6-man. I
Yeah.
said, boys, you're all making $25 more
That's
tonight,
right. That's right.
minimum, because we just eliminated.
That's right.
know,
And
yeah.
have good quality guys that can
Right,
have a 20-minute match.
right.
You know, that's important, you know, and everything.
Or you could do when Mike Samples that one night was 3 different people. Like he was in Mike Samples, he had a hood on, and then he painted his face up as some,
Yeah.
like, I can't remember what he was, some headhunter or something. But he was.
You know, Tony Falk, his very first match when he broke into business, he wrestled as a woman. Tony Falk in Paducah, Kentucky, for Saul Weingroff and them's All-Star Wrestling. He was 14 years old.
Was Crybaby there then? Crybaby Edwards?
I'm sure he was.
Oh, wow. Tony Falk, the Big 7.
Yeah,
That's his
Tony
nickname, the Big
is a
7.
character. He's a character, and that All-Star Wrestling, Dale worked for them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
A guy named Buddy Hack, Joe Ball, Billy Helm.
Joe Ball and Billy Helm from Louisville, ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
right. They were policemen, weren't they?
Right.
I thought they were policemen. Nice guys.
Right.
Wrestling under a hood.
Mm-hmm.
And remember Chuck Connors that wrestled for
Oh,
Dale
Big
Mann?
Chuck Connors. That was Dale Mann's buddy. Yeah.
You know, Dale married his daughter later on.
Do what?
Dale married one of Chuck's
Oh, yeah.
daughters.
Well, that's Dale was married a lot.
Yeah, but hey,
A lot.
do you know how many children Chuck Connors had?
Whole shitload.
37.
I was gonna say that's a whole shitload. He was over with me.
And at the end of his life, I was told he hit oil on some property he had and became a multi-millionaire. At the end of his life, Chuck Connors. But you know, him and Dale were a good tag team as well.
Yeah.
I wrestled them guys many times. They were really good in the ring, you know, and everything.
Wow.
I think this is the best.
Memories.
I think this is the most fun I've ever had doing this.
Thanks.
I don't. I think we were basically entertaining ourselves and
Right.
going down memory lane.
Right.
You're thinking about stuff you haven't thought about in years
Right.
and years
Yes,
and years,
sir.
and then all of a sudden it's coming back. You recommend. You remember this name, how you did this, how I drove by and saw the thing in Georgetown that you were crazy, Bobby Fulton. I had worked
Right.
shows for you. I said, Bobby, you're giving away too much of the money.
Right.
Stuff like that.
I didn't realize you were with like Dale Mann and down. I didn't. And
I left when I read. Here's what happened. Okay, from 16 and 17, I was racing Bobby Fulton in Georgetown, and I mean we would pack the place a lot of times. So when I graduated high school, Dale sold his cattle farm, his milk farm, and opened up a territory. And Dale was smart because what he would do is he would run the first 10 days of the month.
Yeah.
And he would promote the next 20 days for the next 10 days. So I left home and moved down there. And I lived in a place when I left, a bootlegger's place, where finally they blew it up one night. I was in there sleeping and I heard gunshots and explosions and everything. And that's a whole nother story. I'm telling you, we could write 10 books. Easy. If people would say, I can't believe you lived through that. You know,
Yeah.
I can't believe you lived through that.
well, we can have you on again sometime and tell more stories.
I will.
I mean, we can definitely do that.
Hey, Rip's Pinto was orange. Rip's Pinto was
Your
orange.
van was orange. I don't
Yeah,
remember
no,
the
the
Pinto.
van was orange.
The
And my
Pinto was
Pin-
orange.
My Pinto was like brown.
Brown, but I said orange, but it was brownish.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you guys pull up because I remember Billy Tolman. He was a different guy.
Oh, he was out there, baby.
Yeah, he would sew his own head up in the dressing room.
Oh, yeah.
He would get color and sew his own head up. And I just remember so much stuff in them days, but it was brown. I said orange.
As
it
Nick
was a
Goulas
brown.
would say, this is the greatest show in many, many months.
Every Wednesday night, the greatest show ever signed.
The greatest show in many, many months. In the studio with me now is crazy Bobby Fulton. Bobby, tell him what you're going to do to him in Louisville Gardens Tuesday night. Don't forget now, that's Tuesday night. We wanted to thank Bobby for being on the Nick Goulas All-Star Wrestling Program. Harry Thornton's there. He's not doing anything. And we got all the top stars. Tojo's here. Jackie Fargo's here. My boy George Goulas is here. And we wanted to plug one more time. Bobby, can you plug that your date for the big thing extravaganza coming back to Chillicothe?
March the 9th.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it right here.
March 9th.
You heard it right here, March 9th. You put that on your calendar right now, March 9th. And remember, we'll see you in Louisville Tuesday night. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thank you. You guys take care.
I said, get ready, get ready, get ready. I got the dots on. I got the elbow ready, baby. We're going to see it. Let's do it right now.